Okay, we're going to start doing some of the homework now in 5-5 Algebra 2 Honors, 3 to 35 odds. And here are some of the select problems. And it starts off where they already have a common denominator. The common denominator is 4x, there's a plus between them, and you have 15 plus 5. 15 plus 5 is 20. You could factor 20 as 4 times 5. You could factor 4x as 4 times x. Cancel your 4's, leaving you your answer to be 5 over x. So that's your answer for 3. In 7, I like 7. It gives you a common denominator already of x plus 3. In the numerator, you have a 5x and you have plus 15. If you factor a 5 out of the numerator, that gives me x plus 3. That could cancel with this x plus 3 on the denominator, leaving me 5 over 1, or just simply 5. Okay, we've done 3, 7, let's look at 9. These want LCMs, the least common multiple. So you have 3 to the first, x to the first, 3 to the first, x minus 2 to the first. Highest power of 3, highest power of x, highest power of x minus 2. So this is your least common multiple, or would be, if these were your denominators, though, that would be your common denominator. 13, we want to factor everything. So x squared minus 25 factors x plus 5x minus 5. Then you have x minus 5. And you have x. Notice that these powers, I believe, are all ones. The highest power of x plus 5 that I see is to the first. The highest power of x minus 5 I see is to the first. The highest power of x I see is to the first. So your common LCM would be this in factored form. And again, if you're adding fractions with these denominators, that would be your common denominator. Okay, after 13, now we're going to get into some where you actually have to find a common denominator. Sometimes I think you can just do this by thinking, so see if you can follow along with me. What can I turn 3 and 4 into using multiplication? 12. And the biggest power of x I see is 12x, as an x squared. So my common denominator, I believe, is going to be 12x squared. If you don't like that method, you have 3 to the first, x to the 2, 4 is 2 to the second, and x. The highest power of 2 I see is 2 to the second. The highest power of 3 I see is 3 to the first. Highest power of x I see is x to the second. So that's 12x squared. So anyway, that's how you find your common denominator. So sometimes you can just do it by thinking about it. Let's see. If I have an 8, it's over 3x squared. I have a 5, and it's over 4x. There is a minus here. How can I turn 3x squared into 12x squared? Multiply by 4. But I can't multiply by 4 because it changes the value, so I multiply by 4 over 4. And what does that make this? 32. Now on the right, on bottom you'd have 12x squared, on top you just have 32. Now I want to make 4x into 12x squared, so how do I multiply that by? I think 3x. And again, 3x over 3x, I think that makes 15x. And since nothing factors, that would be your result. Okay, we're going to move on to 23. Again, you have to get a common denominator. So I'm going to factor this into x minus 4 times x minus 4. This is 12 over x minus 4. What's my common denominator? What's the highest power of x minus 4 that you see up here? Squared. Is the negative 15 already over that? So basically, I just need to make the right have another x minus 4. If I did this, multiply by a fancy form of 1, I think I'd have this, and now it would be over x minus 4 squared, right? I believe by this negative 15x right here, for some reason I forgot to put an x there, right? So what does this simplify to? What is negative 15x and 12x? Is that a negative 3x? Minus 48 over x minus 4 quantity squared. If you wanted, you could factor a negative 3 out of this, but I don't think it cancels. So I would take any of these last two answers, but definitely you need the x on that 15. I should not have just dropped it. But anyway, the result is boxed in. Okay, after 23, we got somebody that asked 29. This has three different things. So my common denominator will probably be all of them multiplied together. X minus 4 times x times 3x minus 1. So again, that's going to make my denominator into x minus 4, and 3x minus 1. Now there's a plus, excuse me, and a plus. I may just erase and move this 29 up a little bit to make a little room. Excuse me. What does, I have this, what do I need? The other two? Do you agree I need these two? X and 3x minus 1. So I'm going to multiply by x, 3x minus 1. X, 3x minus 1. And what does that give me? Well, it gives me x times 3x minus 1 times x plus 2, right? Which will expand. Now in the middle, you have the x. What two things do you not have? The x minus 4 and the 3x minus 1. So I'm going to have to multiply by what? X minus 4 and 3x minus 1. X minus 4, 3x minus 1. So on top you have 2, x minus 4, 3x minus 1. Finally, on the last one, you have 3x minus 1. What are the two things you do not have? Well, the two things you do not have is the x and the x minus 4. So I'm going to multiply this by x and x minus 4. And I think that would give me the denominator that I need. So on top, I get, looks to be 5x squared times x minus 4. So anyway, I found a common denominator. I multiplied the terms by the appropriate things so that they all now have that same denominator. Now it's just a matter of cleaning it up using your algebra skills. So I'd keep the x out. Multiplying these two here gives me 3x squared, 5x minus 1x, 6x minus 1x is 5x, and last times last is negative 2. And then you have a plus 2 times, this would be 3x squared, that'd be negative 12x, and negative 1x is negative 13x. That's multiplying these together. You'd have 3x squared, you have negative x, negative 12x, which is negative 13x, and last times last is 4. And when you distribute here, you'd have 5x to the third. What would that be? Minus 20x to the second. So we need to clean this up. Distribute this x would be what? 3x to the third plus 5x to the second minus 2x plus, distribute this 2 now, what would I get? 6x to the second minus 26x plus 8. Then you have this plus 5x cubed minus 20x squared. Again, all I have to do is simplify the numerator, so let's work on that a minute. Bring it up over here. How about x to the thirds? What is 3x to the third and 5x to the third? I believe they would combine to give me 8x to the third. How about x squareds? 5x squared and 6x squared, and then another, nope, is that only 2 of them? No, at the end, minus 20x squared. So 5 and 6 make 11 minus 20, I believe is minus 9x squared. Does that sound right? You had 11 minus 20 is negative 9. That's correct. And how about the x's? Negative 2x and negative 26x. What do those combine to give you? Negative 28x. And the last constant, is the 8 the only constant here, I think? Yes. So unless this simplified, or factored, which I don't think it will, I believe this is the result. Let me check in the textbook. But this is the way I'm going to leave it. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to see if we can get a couple more, at least one more done. Here's a complex fraction. My common denominator is 3 and x. So 3 times x would be 3x. So I multiply by a fancy form of 1, which is a common denominator over itself. If you multiply here, the 3's cancel, leaving me x times x, which is x squared. When I multiply here, nothing cancels, and that gives me an 18x. When I multiply 3x times 10, I get 30x. When I multiply here, the x's cancel. 4 times 3 is 12. So I don't know. I can take an x out of the numerator. In the denominator, I could take a 6 out. 5x plus 2, I think. And that's how I would leave number 31. Now I'm going to see if I can squeeze one more. I got about 2 minutes to the bell. I'm sorry, but I'm going to see if I can do this last one here. It's a little more complicated. You have 3x plus 2x minus 2. What are your main denominators? Do you agree it would be x plus 2 and x minus 2? If you multiply them, you get x squared minus 4. Okay, when I multiply here, the x minus 2's cancel, leaving me 3 times x plus 2. When I multiply here, they both cancel because this is x squared minus 4, and that leaves me with 1 times 6. Multiply here, the x plus 2's cancel, leaves me with 3 times x minus 2. And when I multiply here, the x minus 2's cancel, leaving me with just x plus 2. So what does this give me? 3x plus 6 minus 6. So is that just a 3x on top? On bottom, you get 3x minus 6 plus x plus 2. 3x plus 1x is 4x. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So I think the answer the book is going to have would be something along these lines. Anyway, I hope these help. Bring in questions on these. We're probably going to have a quiz soon.